Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Galga TV podcast. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about Coral Castle. But before we get into that, we got Daniel, as
How's
usual,
it going, guys?
and
Krisia,
Krisia.
back again.
Yeah, she might become our co-host now, right?
I don't know. Depends on the topic of the podcast.
Oh, okay. So this topic interests you, or
Yeah, because I was there, so
Okay.
it was fun.
yeah. So the Coral Castle, what is it? It's I guess a castle. I mean, not really. I mean, you guys can kind of see. These are some pictures from a recent trip we did there. This is just outside of Miami in Homestead, I guess, Florida,
Yes.
or it's kind of considered like suburbs of Miami.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically it's the site. It's like 5 acres, I believe, the whole site. But the castle itself is much smaller. I don't know, like 10,000 square feet, something around there. But it was I guess an interesting site, at least for me. For the longest time, I heard about this guy. Right, his name is. I have actually some books, or he calls it books, but they're more like booklets. And I got him there while I was there. Edward Leedskalnin. I hope I'm pronouncing his name properly.
Yeah, he was from Latvia, so
Yeah.
European name.
So I heard about him, and I heard about this place that he built. And I guess the thing that it caught my eye, just like with most people, is that he was very mysterious in how he did it, because he did it all by himself. And at the same time, when people did ask him, he would just claim, well, it's not that hard if you know how. But basically, I know the secrets of how the Great Pyramids in Egypt were built. So that right away is going to make everybody go, what do you mean? I want to know more. So,
Especially since a lot of people thought they were built by aliens, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Or that aliens helped.
Or that
Because
aliens
it
helped,
was
yeah.
Very mysterious, yeah.
And I'll tell you, like like when you hear what the actual archaeologists, like the scholars, the official scholars, academics, that when they talk about things, I mean, it used to sound, like, oh yeah, they know what they're talking about, like 20, 30 years ago. But now most people do not believe the official, I guess, theories or of how explanations of how they think the pyramids were built. And the reason why, I guess I want to say that is, I made some notes because otherwise I'm horrible at remembering those things. But, well, the Great Pyramid, the main one, just the biggest one, right, in Giza, is made out of 2.3 million stone blocks. And one of those blocks, basically, or each one of these blocks, average between like 2.5 tons to 15 tons in weight. Most of it is built out of sandstone. And the pyramids, actually, when they were like brand new, they must have looked amazing because they were perfectly smooth. Yeah, the outside, they must have been just shining, like
And
reflecting.
I think on the top they had like gold or something, because something like with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
sun. I don't know.
Yeah, they had that thing, and it was just, but it must have looked amazing, those pyramids, and they were like perfectly polished, sandstone. And then the incredible thing is that inside of it they have some amazing like tunnels and all that stuff, and those are done out of granite, which is a very, very hard stone to cut. And not only that, but they didn't have any, like, basically granite or anywhere close to where the pyramids are built. There's no quarries found anywhere. There's no, the stone doesn't occur naturally. And I think the closest they found is like over 1,000 kilometers, I think. No, 1,500 kilometers south or up the river or Nile in Egypt. So they found there, and they're basically just, all archaeologists and scientists are just saying, well, it must have been quarried there and brought all the way, down the river into where the Great Pyramids were built. So, it sounds obviously right away like complicated and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then the official theory, I guess, and that's partially based on like one of these Greek historians, Herodotus. Basically, what he described it at, or as what he heard from his counterparts at the time in in Egypt, is that it took about 100,000 men to build basically the Great Pyramid of Giza, and it took them about 20 years to do it. And then, that makes you go right away like, wow, right? What a task, right? Imagine that many people working for that long.
Yeah.
The thing to me that doesn't add up, and many other people now have kind of discredited that, is first of all, if you were to look at that, if you were to even take 20 years and divide that literally by how many days that is, 20 years, and think, then that means that it would have to put those 2.3 million blocks. That means that one block would have to be put down, put in its place every, I think it's like 5 or 10 minutes, somewhere between there. So every 5 or 10 minutes, nonstop going on work for 20 years. Mind you, these blocks are, like I said, between 2.5 to 15 pounds in weight, and just logistically think about it. Like even right now with technology that we have, to get all those stones, like right now when you build in construction sites and we have much better technology, there's just no freaking way you could build it in that 20 years. It just doesn't seem plausible, because not only would it be insane to work nonstop 24/7, not like 9 to 5, but 24/7 for 20 years. And just imagine what that would do to the people. And, I don't care. People said, oh, well, Egyptians had slaves. Well, even slaves revolt, and they have revolted many places.
And I'm pretty sure many of them died in the process.
Exactly. That would be another, at that pace, they would be just dropping like flies. How do you replace your workforce? And not only that, but then you have got to make sure that you're getting people who are skilled. Not just getting just anybody, right?
Yeah, it's got to be real precise work.
Yeah. So that right away, when I started hearing those details, I was like, well, yeah. So the official archaeological, whatever explanation and thing. And then, I'll tell you that, there's a few things, but a lot of times when you see the official stories, here, let me just play something. Let me just wait for the Google ads to finish. So this is from one of these, basically official stories, right? The way the archaeologists explain. And you can see, by the way, right now, the Great Pyramid, they're massive and never been there, but I heard that they're very, very impressive. You can see how tall they are, but they don't look so beautiful and so smooth. And the reason is because all of that beautiful polished sandstone that was on the exterior was over the centuries or thousands of years was stolen, and pretty much they found it in mausoleums, mosques, all over Cairo and other places. I think, so now look at this. This is how all official archaeologists, imagine this was done. They built these massive ramps, and you had all these slaves, basically pushing with ropes or pulling with ropes these things, and they would just zigzag and go up and down, to build these structures. Well,
or I guess these are different methods that they're showing.
Yeah, that they're thinking some of the different theories.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, right away you can see when you see the way an archaeologist thinks versus if you talk to somebody who actually works in construction. You would never, and I don't even mean right now, but even 100, 200, 500 years ago, if you talk to somebody who actually works in construction, why the hell would you do all this work with people? It'd just be insane. Even back then, they had animals, they had mules. You would never want to tire your workforce like that.
I'm pretty sure they used animals too in the process.
Yeah, but I'm saying, in all these stories, in all these official explanations that archaeologists have.
Oh no, it's crumbling.
They don't even have this in theory. And the problem with that, though, is, of course, if you're using animals, you can pull bigger blocks and all that stuff, but you have then the problem with bigger ramps, because animals, it's not as accurate. You're basically going to need bigger ramps. And also I know there was a bunch of people who were doing experiments with this, and they said that to even just pull one of these heavy ass, blocks of stone, 10 whatever tons in weight. So this is actually from the inside, the granite.
Yeah.
And you see, it's so perfectly cut
not
there.
Not even
that,
a credit card.
Yeah, nothing. Not a knife can even fit there.
Yeah, it's very precise.
And this has already been eroded over thousands of years.
But that's on the inside, I guess.
That was on the inside.
On the inside, it's
the stuff that survived,
more
I guess.
preserved.
Yeah. So I think, here's another. This is how archaeologists think, how they got these perfectly straight cut edges. And it's you're telling me that just because these people lived, 5,000 was the official story that these pyramids were built. Just because they built 5,000 years ago, they couldn't come up with a straight edge, and they had to use this primitive technique of doing basically a string on two things. not only that, but that itself actually there's a lot of issues with that technique. It would actually be not as accurate. So that just shows you that basically archaeologists are not engineers and they're not, construction, foremen, or don't have any construction experience. So they're just telling you what they can imagine. But right away, when you talk to people who actually work like masons this day, they obviously use different technology. But a lot of masons, they also study about some of the older techniques that were used. And that's the interesting thing about like this guy, right? Edward from the Coral Castles, because he came from Latvia, from a family supposedly. I mean, there's not much known about this guy, but he came from a family of masons.
Uh-huh.
And he was actually, a stonemason. I think he was part of, that whole secret society. They say that George Washington was part of, many other like exceptional
like
people.
he was a Freemason?
Yeah, so maybe people
Okay.
say that because I'll tell you at the Coral Castle you see a lot of the same marks.
Symbols,
Yeah,
yeah.
like
Really? Okay.
he put in these things. Now it could have just been coincidence, but
Maybe he was a fan.
maybe he was a fan. Yeah, let me see here. Some of the photos that we took. So this is the entrance to Coral Castle. He used to charge, and he basically did this as a kind of as a showpiece and a way to make money. He used to charge 10 cents, so that's an actual sign that as you used to enter back in the day, you pay. Now, sadly, it's around $70 we paid, no, $80. So it's like $20 per person. So,
Well, I mean, it's advertised there for 10 cents. They should have to honor that.
I know.
That's true.
I think that one of the guys joked is like, oh, inflation. I'm like, yeah,
Exactly. That's crazy inflation, though.
Yeah.
But it says drop below, and if you see in the photo, there is something there where you can drop it. I don't know what that is, or maybe in the back, and maybe there was a bucket there. Who knows? But yeah.
So I'll just throw my 10 cents when I go right there.
Yeah, that's it. He didn't even collect it personally. You would just.
Oh yeah, it was like an honor
Drop
system.
it.
And it was completely different back in the day. But
Yeah.
let me see here some of these other photos that I have.
Great, the same one.
Oh, I know. I'm trying to scroll here through here. I took a lot of photos. Oh, another thing that's interesting about him. Ignore my sweat here. This
It
is
was a hot day.
This is a life-size photo of this guy, Edward.
He was 5 feet tall, 100 pounds.
Like around 100 pounds. Yeah, I mean,
No,
he was.
That's what they say. Probably less.
Well, when he died, he actually died because of malnutrition. So he was supposedly even skinnier. But yeah, he was around 100 pounds. Like anybody changes their weight, but yeah, look at him. I mean, he was tiny.
Yeah, he was short.
Even you, baby, you could run around him, and
I think by 1 inch I'm taller.
Yeah.
Just slightly.
So this guy was definitely not like somebody you think, okay, he's muscle, he could do all this. So he definitely, let's just say, he didn't put his, he didn't use his muscles. He used his brains, right?
Yeah.
And this is what he built. So he built these, pretty much almost a complete wall all around, because it took him almost, 28 years to build this.
And he built those walls because he wanted privacy when he was building inside.
Yeah, he didn't want people to look how he was doing it. So he built the walls first.
And then they explained how he did the cuts where you see the...
Yeah, so
like
you can see these little marks. Yeah. So before we get into all this, I just want to kind of so this is coral stone. Definitely not as hard as sandstone, or nowhere near as hard as a granite, because it can be chipped away a lot easier. They're still heavy blacks though. Like you see, this is
most of them are just one piece. What you see there, just like one piece, Yeah.
Let me join. Like example, this is clearly a thing. Krisia posing, and then behind there is that one of the bigger stones. This one is like 20 something tons. So I mean, imagine this is like the weight of like a few cars, right? Put together.
And it's actually on the other side of this wall, on the triangle, where you see either the triangle or the rectangle, where you see that sign of the Mason, the Freemason.
Yeah. But even this, you see, like this is actually like the what do you call it? The angle that the Mason
like
symbol.
The compass.
Yeah, that they have. So that's one of the marks.
Yeah.
They have this revolving door. Maybe I'll talk about.
Yeah, I saw
after.
that revolving door in the video.
Yeah,
that was pretty impressive because I forget how much they said that door weighed, but it was a lot. It was like a few tons or something.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It was also. I forget now exactly.
Right
Did it
now-
feel like sturdy when you were pushing it, or was
No,
it?
You right now you can't
you
push
can't
it.
push it anymore.
It doesn't
It
work.
broke about
Oh.
50 years ago, and they tried to repair it, and they hired somebody,
Yeah, like a
and that
company.
person couldn't figure it out.
No, it was a bunch of engineers
Yeah,
they hired.
and they couldn't figure it out.
They said 4 engineers. They came in with a giant crane that could lift 30 tons.
And they fixed it actually, and it worked for another 20 years.
well,
they
they
said
they said they
something like
fixed it, but it never worked as smoothly as it did before, like as what this guy did on his own.
I guess that's the problem with keeping secrets like that.
I
There's no one to
agree.
pass it on to.
Yes, that's exactly when I was talking to Tom about this the other day. I was like, why keep it a secret? Why wouldn't you want to share this knowledge or
Well, I have a
this
theory on this.
information with people if it might help you?
Well,
you know?
why do you think he did?
Huh?
Why do you guys think?
I don't know why. That's my how we say in Spanish, mi coraje. Like I'm like upset. Why didn't he share this? And then he died and he didn't tell anybody. Or
Yeah.
he did write something down. You read the book, so
Yeah, I read his booklets. So
I guess family photos we're sharing, huh?
yeah, well, yeah, from our trip, but this is this little pond that he built.
So let's. I think we should start with the beginning.
Well, yes, okay.
About
So he was. I mean, I'm guessing most people who are going to be interested in Coral Castle, they kind of probably already know about this guy. So I don't want to, I guess, like bore people.
But the
with
story behind it, because it kind of got romanticized a little bit about why he built this castle and in this area, and it just people said that it was because when he was in Latvia, he was engaged to a girl that was 16 years old. He was 10 years older than her. And then at the very end, she broke off the engagement. And he was just heartbroken ever since. And he was building this castle for his sweet 16.
Yeah.
Now, that's the romantic story that they tell you.
And he
But Tom
references
is going
that
to
in
right
his
away
books. Well,
tear
he-
that story apart.
No, not necessarily. I mean, at the end of the day, there's nothing. I'll tell you guys right away. I have no big secrets. I don't think I figured out, but I just kind of pieced a lot of different things together from what other people found online, from doing my own critical thinking. And I'll tell you guys that, like I said, I've heard about this for years, and I always wanted to go there, and then just whatever. Like this time, we're literally like 10 minutes away from there. Was where we were staying.
Yeah, he did always want to go.
Yeah.
And we went to the area in 2021, and because of COVID, it was closed. And now that we went back, 2 weeks ago, then finally we were able to visit. But yeah, it was Tom.
Yeah, so I heard about this, and I'll tell you guys that I right away thought it's got to be some crazy technology this guy had, right? Like this crazy technology. Because of, like I said, like if he claims he knows how the pyramids were built, well, like I said, there's a lot of these very unexplained things that even today, people are saying, we don't know how the pyramids were built. Now, getting back to the pyramids, I mean, could the pyramids be built today? Well, I looked online, and there's actually a lot of people who work in construction, big construction companies, and do big projects, say that basically, yeah, it could be done. I mean, we still quarry stone. We do it, for countertops, all that stuff, for other big projects. And today, if you're using basically stone-carrying vehicles, using cranes, the biggest helicopters that we have, it would take not 100,000 men in 20 years, like the official story is, or maybe, like I said, because I don't even think that would have been possible. Probably would have taken a lot more men or a lot more time. But right now, it would have taken around basically 1,500 to 2,000 people, they're saying, and it would take about 5 years to build the Great Pyramid of Giza. So it can be done today. Like some people claim, well, we couldn't even do that today. No, we could do it. And we could do it just as accurate, maybe even smoother. I don't know.
You think in 5 years?
Yeah. I mean, you can, if the money's there, but that's the whole issue. Is now everything comes down to money, right?
Back then, the pharaohs had a lot of money.
Yeah, or they just didn't care about money. They were just like, whatever, you're gonna work, and or we kill you.
That's true.
I think it would boil down to money. Like I think with the technology they have now, there's no way they wouldn't be able to replicate that today.
So so I'm saying, so we could build it definitely, but it just nobody's gonna do it right now because people will be like, why the hell? Oh yeah, and it would cost estimated around $10 billion today's money. With this inflation, it's gonna very quickly go up. But yeah, so that just shows you, nobody in their right mind, at least right now, is gonna spend that kind of money, right, to build something like this, especially when they're claiming the pharaohs built this for as their graves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now here's another thing that I also didn't know about the pyramids, because I used to think all this like, oh yeah, they just had all these slaves and all that stuff. So a lot of those things, the official archaeological explanations about the pyramids don't add up, like I told you, with the building and the timeline of it taking 20 years, which has been insane, whatever. But if it was done through manual labor, it must have taken many, many more years. Another thing that's interesting is that you go all over ancient Egypt, right? Ancient, like
Archaeological.
Yes, thank you. Archaeological. Tongue twister for me. Archaeological sites, right? In all over Egypt, and you'll find from those basically that period of 1,000 years, pretty much, around 4,000 years ago, current time. You'll find those different dynasties that lived in Egypt. And you'll see they wrote down, they had the hieroglyphs, right, their language, and they wrote down everything. They described their culture, their god beliefs, their agriculture. I mean, everything.
Yeah, they left record of
everything.
The food, everything.
Except
that's true.
how they built the pyramids.
Again, another mystery. Why?
No, yeah. And here's another thing. All over their buildings, all over their temples,
I think the answer is there.
No.
You just have to look.
So now listen to this. All over their temples, all over their their burial grounds and all this stuff, they left descriptions of everything and who's there, all that stuff, and you could find the mummified remains.
Yeah.
Guess what? There's nothing ever been found in any of the pyramids. So they didn't find any remains. There's no graves. None of the inside of the actual.
I don't know if that's necessarily true.
I mean, that is true. So
I've heard that they've found mummies buried, not in
in the pyramids, and not only that, but like the interesting thing is that here, let me show you guys some like videos, because there's some other people. One guy is Brian Forrester, and I actually want to show him here. And the interesting thing about him, right, that he kind of shows off is that he's a guy who basically, he's not a scholar, of course, because of that. It's like, oh well, he's not an academic, so we can't trust him. But he just goes to these places and he looks at them and he just says right away, well, a lot of things don't add up, right? This is, for example, say one of the pyramids, one of the shafts that goes into the Great Pyramid of Giza. What you got to keep in mind is none of those handrails or those stairs are there. These are all added, made out of wood by archaeologists. Meaning this is a shaft that's perfectly smooth. And back in the day, before these stairs were built, you would enter there and you would just slide the hell down.
I was just going to say, maybe they just slid quickly from point A to point B.
No.
Yeah, maybe it was like an amusement park for them.
Maybe.
They just-
Maybe it was an indoor amusement park.
No, but I guess what I'm hinting at is this. Why would you spend so much money, so much resources, so much time building a freaking grave when all these other pharaohs had amazing, beautifully decorated graves and they had all these inscriptions of who was there and all that stuff? And they were buried in other, like the Valley of the Dead that they have, where they have all these tombs and all that stuff.
That's true, yeah.
Why is it that just these pyramids, their Egyptians never explained how the pyramids were built? They don't talk about it. It's like as if they didn't know about the pyramids, anything about it, so they don't talk about it. And nothing inside the pyramids was basically has any markings, any hieroglyphs, nothing. So that just shows you that perhaps somebody else built it. Maybe they built it way, way before that. And the reason why I want to kind of, I guess, is one of possible theories is because, the Sphinx that's next to the pyramids, right?
Yes.
So the Sphinx, people say, well, it's like a lion with this tiny head of a man.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of evidence now shows that for probably thousands of years, the Sphinx was just covered. The whole body was covered in by the sand. And just the head was sticking out. And we actually have some records because I think when Napoleon and like some of the other like first Europeans started coming there to Egypt.
Yeah, I've heard that.
There's drawings when they found the Sphinx and it was just a head sticking out.
Yeah.
They didn't even know the rest of the body was there.
That's true.
So, and then when you uncover it, now that it's uncovered, they can see that it's the body of a lion, but the body of the Sphinx has water erosion. Like it's perfectly smooth and the stone is cut as if a lot of water was going over it. Well, this is in the middle of the Sahara. and there is no rain there almost. And now we know that because there's some other like geological studies that have been done, not archaeological, where they found that the Sahara, they're saying maybe as recently as like 5,000-6,000 years ago, was actually a lush jungle, rainforest, and it must have been raining there a lot. So that just shows you that at some point, not that as long as ago as some people were thinking, the Sahara, because before the official story was that the Sahara used to be a forest and then lush jungle, but it was like millions of years ago when dinosaurs were around. Well, now there's some evidence that shows that no, it was much earlier. And so that just shows you that water erosion on the Sphinx's body, it means that the Sphinx was exposed to water, a lot of rain.
I also heard, sorry to interrupt, that the bottom portion of the body was built with a different stone, or it was like constructed differently than the head.
I haven't heard that.
So basically they said that whoever built the bottom part was not the same person that built the head, basically, because it used to be a lion or something, and then I guess they just carved it to be like a pharaoh.
One really good theory I heard, and I think it's by, man, I forgot his name now, but it's this guy who's also like, he looked at this catastrophic event that took place around 12,000 years ago, which was at the end of the last ice age, and that there's evidence of that everywhere. Like I'm saying, people who are not archaeologists, people just study geology, they look at it and they can take ice core samples, and they're saying around 12,000 years ago, something catastrophic happened that almost in a matter of like days, not hundreds of years, water levels rose all over Earth. Flooded a lot of areas, destroyed a lot of, must have been like a cataclysmic event. And then that's where, there's like over 2,000 stories, one of them in the Bible, about the great flood, right? That Noah comes in, and almost every culture has these stories of that. So that's probably where all these stories come from. Because, all these stories, I mean, they're not accurate now, but they're all based on something that people at one point experienced. So that's the thing. So it probably adds up that at around 12,000 years ago, there was a catastrophic event that pretty much wiped out humanity and whatever civilizations we had here. And then the survivors of that slowly had to rebuild. And one of the first civilizations, the survivors that really developed, was probably the Egyptians. But what it looks like is that the Egyptians themselves came across the modern day Giza, that area, and they just by that point must have just been sand, just completely just the everything was just basically the desertification started happening there in that area, so the rainforest disappeared, and basically what it looks like is they discovered a sculpture, the head of a lion, and somebody actually did these drawings and calculations, and they said, if you were to actually sculpt the proportional size head of the lion to the body of the Sphinx, and then later on, if you were to chip it away and try to, within that head, sculpt the head of a pharaoh, like the Sphinx is, then that would be actually the size. And that would explain why the head was so small. So most likely, at some point, it was a lush jungle. There was a much different, civilization that lived there, way over basically 12,000 years before that, and they were way more developed, and they probably built the pyramids, and that's why there's no written records of how they were built or when they were built, because nobody even knows that, because you can't carbon date the rocks or the stones in it. And so most likely that's what happened. It was built by much earlier civilization, and then that civilization basically pretty much all but was wiped out during this great flood that happened around 12,000 years ago. And after that, for pretty much 7,000 years, the Sphinx and the pyramids were just sitting there, getting eroded by water, and slowly the jungle was just receded as more and more sand came. And then eventually it covered the Sphinx, the bottom of it. Just the head was sticking out, must have been really badly damaged. And at some point when the what we consider as the ancient Egyptian civilization came along, saw this, and they must have been like, wow, look at this beautiful sculpture, but it was damaged. And they just in there, decided to carve the head of one of their pharaohs. And then later on, we now discovered that, holy shit, there's a whole body underneath there, and that's the reason why the head is so tiny on the body of a lion, and it doesn't, and it has completely, and like I said, and the body of the lion has erosions from water. Why? Well, because that was untouched by the ancient Egyptians, and it was covered by sand. So once it was covered, there was no more erosion by water happening. Whereas the head of the Sphinx was freshly carved, you could say, around 5,000 years ago, by the Egyptians, and they just carved a pharaoh. So to me, out of all the explanations, it seems like that's the more plausible thing, and that's why the Egyptians themselves were like, we have no idea what these pyramids are. And there's even no evidence that anybody basically, in the Egyptian ancient times actually got into the pyramids, because, mind you, just getting into those shafts that exist there in the pyramids is incredible. It was incredibly hard, because they had to literally remove these stones and drill through it, and they had to be careful, because if you didn't do it from the wrong angle, you could have literally collapsed parts of the pyramid. So, no, yeah, to me, that's kind of what it seems like a more plausible explanation. That's what happened. Now, of course, that doesn't explain, like I said, still how the pyramids were built and all that stuff. But it just shows you that. And by the way, guys, there's evidence, and I'm sure some of you already heard about this, of last civilizations all over the world. There's evidence, even in your country, Ecuador. I remember when I went to see, and this was before I ever heard any alternate stories. I remember first time I went to, what's that place called in Ingapirca?
Ingapirca.
Yeah, in the mountains, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I went to Ingapirca. It's this place where the Incas basically, built I guess you could say the Temple of the Sun, they call it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little village and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about Ingapirca is you go there and you'll see even there the main temple, of the sun and all that stuff, or whatever remains of it, beautiful carved big stones right there.
Yeah.
And then you'll see the settlements around it,
Smaller stones.
little stones cheaply kind of carved away and all that stuff. Still took a lot of work, but I'm saying nowhere near the same quality as what that thing was built. Could it have been built by the same people? Yeah, it could have been. But I'll tell you this then. Then when I started getting interested, and this was in 2006, I went on a backpacking trip to South America. And I went Ecuador, Peru, and then Bolivia. And I remember in Bolivia, I went to Pumapunku. I forget the name of it. But it's an incredible site that no archaeologist even wants to explain, because they basically we have no idea, because there's stones there over 100 tons. I think one that they estimate, because they can't even lift it or whatever, because it's fallen on its side, but perfectly carved with these shapes and stuff. They're saying probably over 1,000 tons. You can just imagine, that's the weight of a giant building. And this was carved and was standing up at one point. So, amazing technology that was done.
Show a picture.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. But yeah, but for those of you guys who are just listening, then
that's right.
I think it's this one. These are some of the sites in Pumapunku. These stones. You have to kind of see them in reference to human beings. I don't know if they have any, but you can. This is this giant gate. And what's incredible too is some of these stones are precisely cut indoors with these angles that right now we would have to use lasers basically, which would take a long time to cut it. So that stuff, I don't even know how it was done, but it is, let's just say, incredibly advanced.
Wow, and look at the design. They even do
And this side nobody wants to touch. This is one of these largest stones that was broken up.
Oh.
And when they were estimating it was over 1,000 tons. Incredible size. What's it called? And the holy city of, you can see here for reference. See, this is one of these large stones with all these things. And it got broken up when it was, something catastrophic obviously happened there. And then when you go to Sacsayhuaman, is another site in Peru. I always forget how you do this spelling. No, now it just looks up for sexy women, which is not. This is not what this podcast is about. No, okay, I don't know.
Maybe with an X.
But then it's I don't know. If I find it all thing. but yeah, so that site, I remember that was there. I spent 2 days, and I remember when we had the official archaeologists kind of take us on tour and explain to us, this was built like this and this is for that. Everything was a temple or a grave. Everything. And I was like, didn't these people ever build things that were like utilitarian, something you can actually use for something? So that's kind of what the thing. And then, but then right away, I just noticed one thing. I looked at it and I'm like, all the stone, and it was funny because they even showed some of the buildings were toppled by the Spanish, because when the Spanish came, they wanted to destroy the Inca culture. They toppled their buildings and they built brick buildings on top of the foundations. But then you'll see like this, the brick buildings built by the Spanish, which there's a lot of earthquakes in that area, so those buildings have been falling and they had to be repaired multiple times. Then below that, you see the Inca stones, which are massive stones compared to the bricks, but very irregular, all that stuff. And then below that, you see these huge stones that are like 20 times the size of what the Inca built. And they, like sometimes like a mosaic, like different shapes, but they fit perfectly.
Yeah.
They're not even like straight. Yeah, you can see there. And they're humongous, like these stones. And also, that's how you spell it?
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. It is, so when you start looking at that, when you start looking at these, and yeah, I have photos from that. I remember this door too is massive. That's when you start going, holy shit, how did they build these? Like these were, cut perfectly, but they're like a mosaic. And the amazing thing about these is they've never, any of these earthquakes fell down. Yeah. Because they're like a puzzle. Like they kind of lock themselves, even though there's no mortar in there's nothing. So that right away makes you basically go, okay, so there's a lot of unexplained architecture or structures all around the world, and they're way, way older. Like this was not built by the Incas. Like, it doesn't even come close when you look at what the Incas, and that guy Brian Forrester actually has good videos where he goes to some of these places that I've gone to, where you can literally see where the Incas built on top of these old structures. So, or next to it, and you see their building is just far, far worse. So it almost looks like there was a much bigger civilization we had, which is totally plausible. I don't know why people are afraid of that. And people have developed to a really great thing. And it was basically like, like that movie with Ben Affleck, Armageddon, where big, asteroid came, and that's one of the theories. Around 12,000 years ago, when an asteroid hit, it, raised the temperatures on Earth.
Ben Affleck?
Yeah, Ben Affleck was in it. From the 90s, remember? Armageddon, the movie?
I feel like somebody else was in that movie. And not Ben Affleck.
So basically, like, the way I see it, there's so much evidence that there was a much bigger civilization that we had on Earth. And like that movie with Ben Affleck, the Armageddon from the 90s.
I don't think it was Ben Affleck.
It was Ben Affleck.
Yeah, he was with Bruce Willis. And,
there we
yeah,
go,
exactly.
Bruce Willis. Oh, I don't.
No, Ben
I
Affleck?
don't remember
he was
Ben
in it
Affleck
too. Yeah,
there.
they were both in it.
So Ben Affleck,
But Bruce Willis
plays his father. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Liv Tyler and that stuff. I always remember that song.
I don't remember him in the
song.
movie. I just remember Bruce.
You don't remember Ben Affleck?
I don't. He's probably not like super famous.
I don't think he was very memorable in that movie.
Maybe because I remember Bruce and Liv.
What do you mean? It's Ben Affleck. Anyways.
Well, now.
Anyways, forget about the movie. So I'm thinking, and a lot of other people now are looking at it and saying it's more plausible that we just simply developed over a longer period, a much bigger civilization. Doesn't mean that we had spaceships like some people are saying, or even the story of Atlantis. Like that's a whole other episode we can do, which some people think it's like a complete fairy tale. No, there's actual historical writings of it and descriptions and all this stuff. It's not some fairy tale place. And they also don't never claim in it that they had flying machines or some secret technology. They were just simply a lot more developed. And then what happened? And then the civilization clearly was all over the world, because when you look at sites like the Great Pyramids of Egypt, Pumapunku, or Sacsayhuaman in South America, or
all over the world. You
Yeah.
mean? There's so many different sites.
So when you look at that, and then they all mysteriously stop, and when you look at it, the few records that we have, it all looks to be around 12,000 years ago, which then just perfectly correlates with what geologists are saying. And they're not archaeologists; they have no game or skin in it. Like as in, oh, this couldn't happen. They just looked at ice core samples and other things, and they just say around 12,000 years ago there was some catastrophic event, most likely an asteroid, and then that caused water levels to instantaneously, rise. And that's actually in the official story, not the bullshit story of Atlantis, which is actually was again written by the Egyptians. Egyptians wrote it, and they said they passed it on to the Greeks, right? Solon.
Oh.
And Solon then took it, and then he wrote it down, and then we have the old writings based on his account. And he actually said the Egyptian priest told him that their ancestors and the ancestors of of theirs too, the common ancestors that lived way before them, and they actually said it was around 7,000 years before that, which would have been 12,000 years ago our time. That around that time, they had this basically great cities. The biggest of them all was Atlantis, and then that in a span of, they describe Atlantis in detail, how it was, the size, blah blah blah, and then that in a span of literally like one day, they started feeling earthquakes. The next day, huge waves came, covered the city, so basically tsunamis. And then afterwards, all that was left was just a sea of sand. And they said it was impassable. And survivors, most of them died when they couldn't get out of there. Only a few people made it. And then for literally hundreds of years after that, people in that whole area couldn't pass because of things. So, and they actually describe it, which would have been Western Sahara, which we can do a whole lot of things. But they basically say it's west of them, which would have been Western Sahara. And that's probably the reason why all of this sand covered all of this northern Africa, right? Because nobody builds giant civilizations in the middle of deserts. So it wasn't desert for sure all the time. And that's what they say even. They say that they have records of that, right? But of course, those records when the great libraries of Alexandria, remember?
They got burned?
Yeah, by crazy, let's just say, religious fanaticals. But anyway, so that's more plausible story. So it means that it wasn't some high, like crazy technology or this and that. It was just people used, skills, that they've kind of acquired probably for over
Do you think this
thousands
guy
of years.
had that skill? He knew how the pyramids and Pumapungo and all these places were built?
So I used to always, and I think I even told you right before we went there,
Probably.
that I was telling you, oh, it's like probably some secret technology, and he knew this, and he was levitating the rocks. I thought, he used electromagnetic. Well, no, that's what I thought. And then we went there.
But I think it kind of was something around there.
Okay.
I think that had to.
Daniel, what do you think?
I think that played a part with like the magnetic fields and being able to lift those.
Well, from just the little bit I saw in the documentaries, it just sounds like he just was good at what he did, like just the engineering. Like it sounded like, from what they said, what I gleaned from it was, with all the technology we have now, it made people not use their head enough, almost.
Yeah.
In order to, that's kind of what I got from the whole thing.
Yep, you hit the nail on the head, I think, there, because, we've gotten lazy. Like think about this. Yeah. A person 100 years ago, you take an average person from 100 or 200 years ago, and you leave them out, like in the wilderness. They're more likely actually going to be able to survive. They might not be able to use the iPhone or whatever. So as a society, they weren't as developed, but individually, they had way more skills. Whereas take an average person right now and drop them off in the middle of a forest, they'll die. There's many cases where
exactly. That's the problem. Is we're almost at this point too reliant on technology. So it's like the people back then, they didn't have all the luxuries we had, so they had to just kind of figure things out with what little they had and make it work.
Yeah,
like it was kind of like adapt and like in order to survive, right? So I think just back then they just were able to kind of use their heads and use what little they had to accomplish what they needed.
Now I'll tell you this: these are the tools that survive of what he was using. They're not some high-tech tools.
They said this is about 30% of what he probably had.
Oh, okay.
Because these were found buried in that, in around that area.
Once I was there, I guess the first thing that changed my, opinion of did he use some crazy technology, alien technology, or was he just it doesn't take away from the fact that I think he was a genius, literally, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I think he had 4th grade education. I mean,
he just finished the 4th grade and then.
And I think that in a way is what made him, so ingenious, because he, I think a lot of times.
And I think
mainstream education just limits you because it just points you to like, well, if you want to do this, use a calculator, use it.
But back in the day, and I'm just thinking about my grandfather. He was born in the early 1930s, they say that back then when he went to school, like education was real education. They taught you a lot.
Like useful things, you mean? More?
Useful things regarding mathematics and reading and a lot of things that even if you didn't finish, you were pretty smart, compared to somebody, from now, right?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
from
there's a lot of
our
things that
time,
they should teach you in school that they just
So
don't.
like he would teach me, and he didn't finish school. You know what I mean? And
Yeah. Well, even Elon Musk said that. Like he said, you can have a bachelor's degree and be a complete idiot. So, education doesn't mean that you're smart, right? Education.
exactly.
But I'll tell you this: when I was there, what I did notice was that it was amazing what he accomplished. The fact that he did this by himself,
But everything
with no like crazy technology, all that stuff, and he knew how to think. Well, the thing is that there's a saying, and it's true. I forgot who said this, but it's in ancient times said, "Give me a lever big enough, right, and I can lift the world." Because literally, you just use simple mathematics in a way, but things that people now don't use that,
yeah.
and you still can calculate how easily, how you can use, talking blocks and all that stuff. Like this is, for example, this.
A calendar and
a clock and a calendar that he built.
A clock and a calendar.
That's operated by the sun, basically sun dialed, and it shows you the time of the year and the time of the day, which is brilliant and how it works. And I would recommend.
And there's this little thing. I don't know if you can. I think it's that if you go to the top.
Yeah.
That's basically like that pointer. So when the sun,
when the shadow here,
you can see the shadow. Then he would be able to tell the time
of the day, and then
of the day.
If it was really really low up here, that means that it's basically summer because the sun is further up in the sky and the shadow was lower.
Yep.
But in the winter, the shadows will be up here.
So that's why you see number 12, December, things like that.
Well, no, this is the time of the day. So this was around basically, and it was funny because we were looking there, and then the guy, our guide, was like, "Oh, does anybody have the time?" And he says, before you tell me, let me just guess, it's probably around 11:30 because this, according to this, will be just basically before 12. 12 would be right here, right in the middle. And then it was like I think off by 5 minutes or something. We're off. So it is pretty ingenious what this guy knew. So he knew about like things like simple things like this and he learned
astrological things he knew also
by observing the world, though, right? Like for example, he built this other thing, which is I think one of the biggest rocks, right?
Yeah.
This huge thing, like an obelisk.
One piece.
Yeah. And inside of it,
this is not the obelisk, though. This is where it was like his telescope.
Like
Like
well, for the Northern Star, it would basically points to the Northern Star. And it's divided the circle into 4 quadrants. So each season of the year, the Northern Star would move from one quadrant to the next. And then the way you view it, obviously you have to view it at night. And I have a little video here. Is you basically look through this little hole. And when you look through this little hole, and then you line up over there, at night, you'll be able to see the North Star in one of those quadrants. And depending on, it starts off, I believe left was, he said, the winter, and then this will be summer, fall, and then, something like that. It was like, it goes like in this, and like,
winter, spring, summer, and fall. That's the order of.
Yeah. But it starts in top left. I know he was the guy who was saying. Anyways, we weren't there at night, so we couldn't see it working at night, but it still works. So this guy was clearly a genius in the sense that he himself self-taught. Now, here's one thing. He loved reading books, right? And he said that multiple times. In this book, actually, it's interesting because like one of these books, like he's got this one book which just talks about the magnetic currents. And this guy, especially when you consider the times that he was living in, most people didn't know about electricity, didn't worry themselves with magnetic currents. And he, not only that, but electromagnetic currents.
But he also was friends with Tesla.
Well, Nikola Tesla.
Nikola
that supposedly he met with him. So he literally built his own electromagnet there. and he used it actually, and that's
To
where.
power a generator. Is that what it was?
Well, he used a generator to power that actually, but then to power some of the tools.
Yes.
And that's actually one of the
There we
videos
go.
that I found of a guy who kind of explains pretty much how, not everything, this guy doesn't, I'm not going to say he knows everything, but he explains then a lot of this, what might seem otherwise like magic, of what this guy did and how he created it. So he shows, for example, this is the electromagnet that he created, and
Wow.
he could hand crank it, or he could use basically batteries, right, to power it. And that could power basically things like the what do you call it, like the lights that he would, because he worked mostly at night, right?
Yes.
And then that's when I started like looking at it and looking at how people are actually building these things. And then when
He
I
had a
realized,
tripod.
yeah, a tripod. And there's actually
He had
all
this-
surviving footage now where you can see this tripod, and you can see it in the photos too, right?
Oh, ooh, groovy.
But here, let me show you. Like, for example, this is one guy showing he literally followed the same logic as Ed did, and he built this tripod. And to even, put a massive tripod like that, and when you're 100 pounds, 5 feet tall, that's not an easy task to do. But you can do it without using muscle power. So you're basically using pulleys. And for those of you who sail, sailing, or even right now, like there's still some people for like minor construction, because for anything bigger we have a crane. We'll get giant cranes. But back in the day, when the times of Ed, people didn't have that technology, and they used pulley systems. So when you have a pulley, for example, if you just take a piece of rope even that can carry only 100 pounds, well, if you loop it once, you're doubling the capacity of that. Suddenly you can pull 200 pounds. You double that again, suddenly you can pull 400 pounds. You can very quickly scale up the thing. So by using pulleys and ratchets, you can actually, first of all, erect a really giant tripod, big enough, and like the one that are actually surviving in the photos with Ed. So you see, and then you use, again, straps and pulleys to bring the legs together, and you can erect these ginormous tripods that are basically the size of trees, right? Like 30, 40 feet tall. You can see this guy actually recreating a lot of the stuff that Ed did. And then you can see the same tools that he's using. He's using the same pulleys there, right? Like in the photos that I took. So this is one of the tripods for those of you guys who are just listening to us. The tripod is basically, because it's massive compared to him. There's Ed down below.
Oh my God, that was the size of it.
Yeah. And then, but look at it. He's got all of these here, like the ratchets and pulleys.
Yeah.
And then not only that, but then turns out there's actually some surviving footage now. And I think I have a better video with the footage. Let me look it up here. So yeah, some people were, this is actually another video. I'm going to provide those links in the description. One of the books of his, which is about the electromagnets, people actually went and because he was an inquisitive guy. So the books aren't like he claims he knows everything. He just basically writes his observations. He's like, I noticed this, or this is interesting, or do this experiment. And that's what people started doing. And a lot of interesting discoveries, which, by the way, to this day, nobody really knows what gravity or magnet really are. We have ways of scientifically calculating them and using them to our advantage, but we still don't know what that is. I mean, like, we definitely don't have all the answers. So, where is it? This stuff here. So yeah, there's a lot of things, and there's actually this reel, because basically at some point, I think it's Universal Studios got interested in him, and they came basically to his site, and they actually recorded some footage with him, and he was more than happy, because I guess at that point he saw, well, maybe I could become like a celebrity and make the kind of money that celebrities make. So when you look at the tripod, right, that he had, massive tripod, you can see here, this is actually what a lot of people who do, well, not anymore, but like I said, back in his days, people who used to do logging, working in forest, that's what they used to do. They used to put these things, and then to attach the ropes there and the ratchets, you would put these stairs there, right? So you can get up there. Then you can see he pulls one thin chain, and that turns the pulley, basically the gear mechanism that basically takes this chain that's multiple times looped. And like I told you guys, when you loop it once or twice, it doubles the strength each time of whatever that chain is capable of lifting.
Oh wow, there's many loops.
Yeah, so suddenly you start seeing, holy crap, this guy could lift a ton. And he did, because he actually shows in this footage that survived now. It wasn't magic. He shows you how he attaches the thing. the ropes, and then how he attaches the pulleys. Then there's a guy here that actually replicated it today too. And this is showing you this is in his days of Ed's days how they used to think. And that's another interesting thing that I kind of knew about it, but then when you're there and you see the tools he was using, is that okay? Here's his story. Ed came from Latvia, right?
Yes.
Emigrated to America. Basically, he was a mason by trade. There wasn't much masonry work. I'm guessing he got into work, into working with the logging companies, because America, everything was built out of wood at the time, and they were cutting huge areas of forest, right? And he slowly made his way all the way to Oregon, worked in there, this crazy areas in the wilderness, and that's where he would have learned all the stone quarrying techniques of cutting stone, shaping stone in Latvia, but then he learned how to lift these giant pieces of wood, like the redwoods in western parts of US, and they would lift these, and some of these pieces of wood also would weigh tons. And this is the techniques that they used. And then he gets sick with, was it tuberculosis, I think?
Yes.
And because of that, the other doctor tells him, well, you got to go to a warmer climate or otherwise you're going to die.
Yeah.
So
he came to Florida.
He almost died. It was like this couple that picked him up. Interesting story. If you guys go to the Coral Castle, they have a cool video that shows that. And then what was it that happened?
Well, he was just picked up, and then this guy that picked him up took him to his house, and his wife took care of him and just fed him, gave him some, not really medicine, but natural remedies in order for him to get better. And after, I think it was like a couple of weeks, maybe a month,
and then they sold him, I think, because the guy was a real estate agent,
and
right?
then Ed was looking for a plot of land, so the couple sold him, I think, 10 acres for $10
Again,
in Florida.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Imagine
they actually said that he took the worst piece of land too.
Yes, that's true. He did take but that's the one that he wanted because all the quarries were underneath.
It was the worst for farmers, right?
For farmers,
because they had the stone, but he wanted
nothing could grow there.
Exactly. He wanted the stone. So for him was the perfect spot.
Yeah, that's true.
So he built his first castle there.
Oh, yeah, and that's another interesting thing. And then he moved it
because he got robbed, right?
Well,
he got like mugged.
There were some stories about that, but I think even probably the bigger reasons why is because he found out about the railway, right? Was it the Flaglers, right? The millionaires, or whatever. That there was this millionaire tycoon who had this railway system in Florida and went all the way to Florida Keys. There was a giant hurricane that destroyed the railway
that would take you to the Florida Keys,
and it went by Miami and all that stuff from other parts of the U.S. And anyways, that got destroyed in the hurricane. So then the U.S. Government was like, okay, we got to build something more permanent. They started building the road, the A1 highway that runs along the east coast of Florida.
Yes.
And it literally was running right through there through Homestead, not far from where Ed was. And Ed, being a good marketing, I guess, because he already was. He knew about how to build his mystery, make it interesting. And basically, he was a retired guy. Like, he had all these skills he learned, how to do masonry, how to do logging, all that stuff. But then I guess he was really sick. Imagine being with tuberculosis. That's not an easy disease either.
But he got better from that.
He got a bit better, but he was still, 100 pounds. And everybody said he was always, like, kind of malnourished and stuff. That's actually what killed him in the end. But anyways, to me, it looks like he was just kind of looking to retire, but he needed to make some money. And he came up with this way, and then he basically, like I said, built the first castle, but not many people were going there. And then he realized just a few miles up, they're going to be building this major road.
Yeah.
Let me move it. And he actually went through the trouble of moving whatever he already built.
Yes. And then they explain here on the tour what pieces were, from the first castle and which ones were new or were built in this area.
And I think so
because the stone was different.
The stone was slightly different.
Yes, that's right.
And then he moved it all, and then what's it called? And then he finished building his the castle there, and the new location. And it's like right there past this greenery is where the main road goes by. So
it's pretty crazy to think that he did it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
And they said that he loaded the truck himself too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's another thing. But
Well,
I'll tell you
they
this.
say the little story that he hired somebody with a truck to help him move it, and then he said, "You have to go. You can't
wait
see. Wait over there."
So
And then
secretive.
But
all of a
again,
sudden,
who said that was the truck driver? Was he in on it too? I mean, they were all in a little town. I mean, they were all going to benefit if this place became this big mystery and attracted. I think he just did it, like I said, because if he just because he used to tell people it's actually really simple if you just know how. Most people just didn't know how.
Why didn't he tell people the how?
Because when you look at this common
because
sense,
he wanted to keep it a mystery.
yeah,
That's
for
what
marketing. Because then
But
people
even
go,
at the end, I'll be like, tell me.
And the fact that he said this is how the Great Pyramids were built, I think he kind of knew, well, there's a lot of things that are explainable things, but by the way, he never went to Egypt. Back in those days, there was not as much information. The archaeologists haven't discovered as much about Egypt. So he didn't even know some of these incredible things about the Great Pyramids. So I don't think he knew, because if he knew some of the incredible things about the pyramids, I think he himself would be even like, holy crap, I mean, it's technically possible, but would have taken a lot of time. Well, here's another thing. Took him 28 years. So you could say he was a pretty damn smart guy. He knew, math, very well, archaeology, constructions, he knew astronomy, all that stuff, all self-taught. So he was definitely a smart guy, not a strong guy, but using his brains, he was able to build all this. But he also had another quality, which most people don't have these days, which is patience. I mean, he spent 28 years by himself building this.
That's
most people.
I also wonder, why didn't he want help? Because people
He
offered
could have
help.
done it faster with help.
Yeah,
but then
you
the secret sauce.
Exactly. No, that's
he
one
would
thing.
have to reveal it.
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at like the footage actually that's surviving, so you can see here like people using this is today, and actually I know because you can buy this at Harbor Freight, for example, one of these pulleys. So you see by using a gear mechanism, you're pulling and it doesn't take any effort, and it basically using gears, it can then pull this, and you can lift tons with this. So now they're made like these pulleys, but back in the day, like basically Ed was just more enjoying it, like basically creative, because he used a lot of things that he could find, and a lot of things that he could find were actually pieces from the Model T, the Ford.
That's
truck.
how he built his
so many things in that Coral Castle. When you go there and you go, oh my God, this is from the Model T, or this is the axle from the Model T, and this is one of the footage that survived, and you can see he's literally was proudly showing off. I think this was shortly before he died. So again, he was showing off how he built this, and then he died, and then after that, it was just this bigger mystery was built around it. The people who bought the property after him, I'm sure, were interested in keeping it more mysterious. So the footage was. I think somebody finally leaked it like recently. But so that's when you start looking at it and you go, okay, so it's not magic, but he was pretty damn smart and very patient. Because I'll tell you, like, I love building, our latest house, I built big parts of it. But the thing is that I don't think I would have the patience to build this castle kind of thingy and spend 28 years of my life.
So see here we're
I could barely build shit from IKEA sometimes. So
yeah, exactly. Most people these days, don't have the patience.
Well, here we see him lifting the rock from the quarry, right, with his little tripod and pulley system.
Yeah.
But then the mystery remains as to how he was able to move all these pieces.
The mystery is solved.
He did it up, up and down. Now we want to know from side to side, and then being able to place it there and then put another one on top.
Look in this footage. So he puts it up. He puts, actually you can't see it because idiot in this video cut it out, but he puts logs, so you can kind of see it there underneath it. A log underneath it. He lays it on that log, and then he again uses ratchets to pull the stone. And that's probably what the ancient Egyptians did.
That's still crazy. If he made one mistake, that thing would crush him.
It would, yeah. I mean, it's the thing, but again, I think he knew that he's not a strong guy, so he was like, let's just use my brains. And he took his time. And that's another thing, is he took his time. He did not hurry. If it took him a year to move that one block, he was like, well, let's not worry about it. It'll take me a year. Whereas most people were like, screw this.
Well, you couldn't do it now. In the age of social media, you need instant gratification. Nobody would take 28 years to do anything right now.
Exactly.
That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So you see, this is the quarry. That's another thing. It's like this was quarried right there, and you can see where the stones were cut out. And you can see on the stones, even in the photos like that we took, right? So, and this is the whole site. You can kind of see it was never finished completely. I'm guessing he was planning to do the shape here
Yeah.
and connected and all that stuff. But yeah, it wasn't finished.
And we
'cause
also think that that pond is after he passed away.
Oh, that was yeah. It was just again a
it was
quarry
just like a quarry, or
like
maybe
this,
there was
and
just
then
water
and it
there.
just got filled because Florida, it rains a lot. And you can look at see these are the stones. These are the photos I took, and that's maybe one thing that changed my opinion for all of you guys, because I know there's going to be a lot of people watching this going, "No, he knew alien secret technology," and I used to think that because I think part of me I wanted to believe that.
You want to believe in aliens?
I kind of do. Like, and I believe there are aliens, whether they're here or not. I mean, I have all these great stories I heard, and all that, and makes me think, no, they're probably here. But that doesn't mean that this guy knew that, or he knew aliens, or he knew alien technology. It's just sometimes people want and they come up with bigger things. Because I know I was doing that, and then guess what? I went there, and one thing I noticed, guys, I'll tell you, is that it is beautiful, right? This place.
Oh yeah, it's really
But was
really
it-
nice, and
Was it as beautiful as even what you've seen of the Great Pyramids, or you heard how smooth and beautifully they were done?
No, this is very rough.
Exactly.
Very rough.
And
very
not
rough.
it's so rough that look at this. You can actually see how he pried
How
the
he
stone
cut it,
from
yeah.
the bedrock. And it's a simple technique that
Mm-hmm.
I've actually used when I was building something at our cottage in Canada, and I had to basically break a rock, which is you drill little holes, or you can with a hammer the things in there, and then you put pieces of wood, and that's basically what these are. So these are little like pieces of wood that you would slide in there every so
Yeah.
on. And then guess what? You pour water on them. The wood absorbs the water,
And
it
the wood
thickens,
expands, yeah.
and it just cracks the rock, and
Yep.
that's it. So
That's why he had to put a few.
yeah, and you can see it on every piece of stone that's
Yeah.
here, and it's very roughly thing. Then you can also see how he cut certain other edges, how using this saw thing that this other guy explains. He basically was he was a smart guy. He was like, why am I gonna use pure muscle when I can just use my brains? And he used things, and then the next thing I realized is this guy had a lot of patience. Because when I was there, I guess that was my assumption. I thought it was much bigger. It's not as big. I mean, it is impressive, don't anything. But I'll say to everybody who's now ripping their hairs out right now or cursing me and saying, "Tom, you idiot! Of course you had alien technology." I'll tell you guys, I wanted to believe that, and I went there, and I was still amazed. But that's when I realized, no, this isn't alien technology. It's just a guy who's a hardworking guy, very patient guy, and very smart guy, who basically was like, I'm pretty much in my retirement. What am I going to worry about? This is, let me build this, let me have fun, and make money. He charged people. Basically, the only reason why he built this was he had tourists coming.
Yeah, and
And that's how
the
he-
nice thing about the castle, because you're talking about all the construction and how this was built, but if you go inside, he was building it like a home.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what because again they go back to this Sweet 16 story where he was building this castle for his bride that never was.
Yeah.
And you see, he had like a bathtub, he had like a dining room. I mean, everything made out of stone. He had a place where they can read, and a little pond and a pool. Not a pool. It was like for fresh water. And what else was there?
Oh,
So basically, he also had like a punishment
oh yeah,
corner
for the kids and for his
the
wife.
kids, because he was always thinking about the kids and his wife. Yeah, I wish we had photos of it.
I do have photos.
But yeah, so he had like a throne
yeah.
where he had the big throne up in the front,
Yeah.
right? And then in the back was the throne for his wife, a little bit smaller. And then he had like two mini thrones for his kids. So he was very old school.
Oh, and that's
old
another
school,
thing.
Very, the man is the man.
When you guys
and,
read
you know,
these, he shares his political point of views. He shares with some of them I agree, some of them I don't. Even about women, about men.
Yeah.
And like he's
I haven't read it, but Tom,
I read parts of it to you, right?
yeah.
He really was strong opinionated about a lot of things, and he had his I could say morals that he stuck to, and you could see he when he knew something he did it. Like these guys, for example, show you these techniques of quarrying rock, which now you would do that with machinery, so you can cut it. And Ed actually came up with some machinery that basically took a lot of the work. But I also think that's also another reason, like somebody said, Well, why was he doing all the work at night? Because he was being mysterious and didn't want anybody to know. No, it's Florida.
Yeah. So
We were there a few weeks ago. And
oh my God.
You just walking, you wanted to die.
Oh my God. Because it's stone.
Oh, and that too.
The
yeah.
sun was reflecting on this stone, and you literally felt your skin melting.
You can't do anything, and you work.
It's so hot there.
You would die, I think.
That they even offer you umbrellas.
Yeah.
For the sun. To hide from the sun.
It sounds like he knew what he was doing anyway. Just in general, like, I mean,
yeah.
It sounds like he followed that rule. What is it, that saying? Work smart, not hard.
Yeah, exactly.
He just works smart.
Yeah.
So he worked at night.
So and that makes sense because at night it's nice and cool in Florida. Sweet 16. So this is the one of the electromagnets he built. Well, the earlier one was built. This is also built out of some parts out of the Model T.
Yeah.
The transmission and things like that. Well, the first one that was actually because this is how many magnets were in the alternator, I believe it was, or whatever. Then the Model T that he took had basically 16 electromagnets on it, and he describes it in the book and all that stuff. And then when you started saying, and he even puts in the book, and he told people that I'm waiting on my Sweet 16. I think he was just having fun with it because there's one guy who actually shows what the Sweet 16 was used for. The electromagnet literally was created so that a lot of the work was automated. So he didn't even have to sit there and chip it away.
So he was charging it?
So he was basically, so he was waiting. Well, yeah, the batteries had to be charged. And once the batteries were charged, he would use that to slowly chip away some of the rock. So he still did probably some of the manual labor, but a lot of it was basically just this machine. See, so he took that heavy door. Remember, there was a metal door when we entered, and then that heavy metal door was basically used to actually had like a sharp edge on one side, and he would use this simple sort of like a locomotive kind of mechanism to start cutting it from the bedrock, the thing. So why? And that's why he said he spent all this time during the day pretty much reading books. Right? He loved reading books, and he learned a lot just by reading, observing. But then you start, thinking, you go, yeah, that's why he sat there during the day. He read, he took it easy because it was hot. And then, afterwards, he basically just spent time, and he let the machines do a lot of. So like you see, even this manual labor of driving these stakes, well, he came up with a simple mechanism that uses gravity and then a little electromagnet to basically pull and then drop, pull and drop. So he didn't have to hammer away like this because, hammering away like this over 20 years would break your back, your joints would ache. And this guy was smart. So he was like, why would I do that when I can think? See, this is one of like people showing the same things that they're using, the same techniques that he was showing here. So, there's he was definitely an ingenious thing. That at least that's
he also had a barbecue. Now that you saw that.
Oh yeah. That big barbecue thing that he built.
And he used to sell hot dogs to the people that would pay. The guests that would pay.
He was making money.
The museum, so he would sell hot dogs.
Yeah.
And his diet consisted of probably hot dogs and something else. And they said that he ate the same thing every day till the day he died.
And that's why he died. So.
And that's why he died because he had a poor diet.
Yeah. So this is like one of the electromagnets, and then that he was using, and basically the first one consisted of 16 of these. So I believe, and this is what some actually other people are saying, because when I read it too in his booklet, he basically kept on always referring that he's waiting on the Sweet 16, meaning when he had to chip away, basically drive one of these stakes into the thing, he didn't do that manually himself because, again, it would hurt your wrists, hurt your, like my hands actually. I have problems now. I'm not that old, but yet like I've done so much construction now on our house and properties that it just hurts. Like my joints hurt and stuff. So I was also thinking like, how would he by himself do all this work? Well, he was smarter than me. He basically just said, screw that. I'm going to come up with spend the time to build a little mechanism that will do all that hammering and all that hard work. And that's what he did. And he built it. And, he had a great understanding of electricity, of electromagnets, all that stuff. And he built all this stuff himself. And that's why then he would just sit back, read his book while he was waiting on the Sweet 16 to do all the work for him, basically. The electromagnetic, basically, the little mechanism that he came up with.
Okay, that's a good explanation. So then how do you think that's why inside the castle there are many references to his Sweet 16? Right, like he always made everything like 16 corners, 16 whatever.
Because I think, like I said, the whole thing started.
That was his lucky number?
Yeah, the whole thing started with that electromagnet, basically.
Now that I think about it, that little fountain that had the 16 corners.
Did it have 16 corners?
It may
we have a
it kind.
photo of it. that I
Yeah.
took.
And I think I took one. I don't know. Yeah, go back.
Hold on, there's another one.
That
This one,
one.
right?
So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
they say it. And this now it looks like that machine that he was using.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, it
Yeah.
looks like that invention. One of the other tables, he had two tables. One was shaped, like a heart,
And the other one, like
and the other one was
Florida,
shaped
right?
in the state of Florida because he invited the governor of Florida
at the time.
at the time, but sadly he never went. So
Hmm.
No,
Yeah.
and so you could see he was thinking like a good good marketing. Like, let me get the governor in there. Let me
Yeah.
build closer to the main road, and
yeah,
because he was basically more interested in making money from like a tourist attraction, and he realized, hey, I do have some skills. Like, as you think about it, if you're a guy with no formal education, you don't have much money, you're an immigrant in this country, and then you're thinking, okay, my health is failing. I cannot be constantly working up there in these, logging these giant trees. Let me retire. Well, what can I do to still make money? Well, he came up with the perfect way.
but he was 65, I believe, when he passed away. He
Yeah,
was in
so
his 60s, and if it took him 28 years to build it, he was not in retirement age.
No, but he was very sick, baby. That's why he had to stop working in the logging industry, because he couldn't take that climate, that lifestyle. That's why he moved to Florida, right? And even here in Florida, he was basically helped by this couple, right? And then
Yeah.
they kind of helped him. They sold him this land really cheaply. And he kind of was like, well, let me do something. And instead of sitting and being basically, please feed me to the rest of he was like, well, no, I can take care of myself. So he wasn't a millionaire, but he made just enough to get by, pay his bills, his food, and that was it. That's what it looks like to me. So again,
So
I
after
guess-
he was 38, 40 years old, do you think he stopped working?
yeah,
Altogether?
he was working on this thing. But
But like,
no, he didn't do any other things. I mean, he
Oh.
spent his life on this. The second biggest part of his life. Yeah. He just, that's what he did. He was like, because and everybody said he was there. He didn't travel. He didn't. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a more plausible thing. Now, again, does that explain the pyramids? No, it doesn't. But I think the pyramids also doesn't mean that they were, some alien technology. There's you guys can do this. There's a video. I'll provide a link. The acoustic resonance, which is there's multiple of these, but you can look them up. Basically, people upload these videos, and I'm not gonna play the sound maybe, but right now, but you guys can basically see, or actually for those of you who are listening, maybe I will play the sound a little bit.
The first of the main chambers of the Red Pyramid.
So you hear that echo? It literally, the inside of the chambers, which again are never housed any remains of any pharaohs or anything like that, they're built out of these. There's some videos that have like great explanations of this, but they're built basically like a musical instrument that carries a certain vibration, sound vibration. And for those people who don't know right now, I mean, even Nikola Tesla said, think of terms, if you want to learn all the secrets of the world, think of electrical basically current. Think of, frequencies. Think of waves. Well, sound is a frequency, is a wave, right? Mm-hmm. And many people now even say that, like, even like people like, mystics like Sadhguru or many others say that actually everything is, but the end of even scientists are now saying everything's technically created. And it's our whole world, or molecules that exist only because of basically different frequencies, electromagnetic frequencies, and so they're actually essentially nothing more but sound. Nothing exists in this world, but sound creates this illusion that we have this physical world. Another topic for another video, but then and even in like the Bible, it says God spoke and He created the world, right? And first was the Word, it says in the Bible, and then and then actually the earlier translations of the stories of the Old Testament, it actually says not the Word, but God made a sound, and that's what became created the beginning of the universe. That's how it is explained. So later on, they changed it to the God, basically basically said a word or whatever. But basically made a sound. And even, like I said, scientists now realize that that's how the universe actually was created. It was just with nothing but sound reverberating and then subdividing into more and more complexities and slowly creating particles out of that. Particles get together, build galaxies, planets, and all that stuff. So to me, I think, nobody knows, but I think the pyramids were more like maybe some giant machine that created energy or created, I don't know exactly what they did, but they were definitely a lot more advanced in that sense. And it just simply means that now we have scientists that study a completely different aspect of the physical, but we don't actually look at those things. Well, now we're kind of slowly exploring, like in the CERN particle accelerator in Switzerland. I know they're experimenting with that and the whole gut particle that they discovered. But for the longest time, we were not. We're more like these kind of monkeys who are more interested in these mechanical like inventions, you could say. And I think that's what it just shows, is that ancient cultures probably had a bigger understanding in that sense about sound, and reverberations, and they probably realized, holy crap, there's a lot of incredible things you can do with that. So that at least that's my thing, and I don't think there was any magic definitely in Carol Castle. It's a lot more primitive actually than the Great Pyramids. But I think he knew big aspects of how the Great Pyramids were built, but not everything. That's my opinion.
Yeah. So what do
Yeah, he
you
probably
like
had a
about?
guess.
What's that?
I said he probably had a guess, like I guess just based off his own personal knowledge. Like I'm sure he didn't, like I guess know 100%, but I think he knew, just based off of like the guy was obviously very smart, so he probably just an educated guess. He knew how they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it was like trial and error, till he got to a point where it was
Again,
just
he was patient
experimenting. Yeah,
Yeah.
and just the easiest way to build this, this castle that lived in his imagination.
person. Exactly.
It was a little more rough than the pyramids, but at the same time, it was just him.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Exactly, and that's what makes it
So incredible. Yeah.
incredible for us now. In the
Because I think none of us can even imagine how could you, there's no way, and again, like you said, people, they want instant gratification. So they'll be like, I'm not going to spend 20 something years or whatever building this castle.
Yeah.
Right?
today I was just
Exactly.
getting frustrated making dinner. It was taking too long.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely have to have patience. Yeah. Something that we lack. So and that's another thing. Maybe comparing our civilization probably to all those ancient civilizations is that they probably learned were a lot more patient, and they could strive for these goals that maybe were even when you look at the family that started building the Mount Rushmore, right? And now now for example the White Horse, right? Which is the Native
it's
Americans.
taking a long time.
Yeah, they were building, kind of near Mount Rushmore, this other giant monument out of rocks. And they literally, like both cases, the guy who started it kind of knew, I'm never actually going to see this in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But he was like, but who cares? I'm going to start it. I'm going to spend my whole life, and that's what he did, living in horrible conditions at the beginning. I mean, he had nothing there in the forest and started shaping this rock just because he decided. He was so committed. And now I think most people aren't that committed. They'll be like, well, what's the point?
I don't. Aside from the people not being committed, there's so many distractions.
Well, and I think
People are like, oh, I got to do, like social media, and there's so many distractions that people.
And
forget.
I think those distractions though exist because again, people can't commit to anything, so they constantly want something new, right?
That's also because like a lot of people are. I think just things are just really easy now, so people don't really want to have to do a lot of trial and error. If it doesn't work right away or you don't get the results you want the first time, a lot of people I find these days kind of just give up.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, that's what it seems like. I mean, I don't know. So it seems like you guys, I guess, agree with me. Like you've seen these videos, right? I know this guy in Michigan who basically also just shows how he can take a rock that's like 300 pounds and just by using gravity and simple calculations, he can flip it.
Yeah.
Here he takes a rock that's like 1,600 pounds. So it's like the weight of like a small car, and he can he can rotate it. He can then move it, and it's funny because in this video, actually, his own kids are like,
who cares about moving blocks around? And then when you look at the magnitude of the weights that he's moving around, it is really impressive, and he's not used to
That
that.
sums it up. He's less like, at first he was just like, who cares? But then he's just like, after he noticed that other people cared, he's like, oh, you know what, this
the
impressive.
TV crew showed up here. Yeah, but it's funny because his own son is like he was, and I see the whole interview. He's like, "Who cares, Dad? Why the hell are you doing this?" You know.
You could see it. You could see
was
it just
his
before
own
the
personal
TV
mission.
cameras got
Yeah.
there. He was like, who gives a shit, Dad?
Yeah. And look, that guy in Michigan just figured out how to use leverage, center of gravity, and by putting rocks in there, he could rotate this giant stone that weighs tons by himself.
Cora Castle should hire him.
Yeah,
Maybe he can fix the door.
he could probably. Yeah.
Yeah, he
like
probably
this
could
is
fix
exactly
that
what
door.
he's doing. And look,
Yeah, and then he says using 2 rocks, you can then lever one and the other, and you can actually move it just without even using the pulley system. So, you know what I mean? Like, and then
just why that, the way the door
yeah,
was.
he even moved the freaking barn they show here for a neighbor. His neighbor needed to move
Oh,
the barn.
yeah, I did see that, yeah.
And he using like basically pulleys again, giant barn all by himself without
Yeah,
using.
I think they said like 300 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then he took this thing, which is over 20 something tons. Look at this ginormous piece. It's actually concrete, but anyways, whatever. It could be a piece of granite or anything. And he was experimenting, and it just shows you this guy has the time and the patience, and he was like, I just want to find out. And he figured out a way to raise this rock by himself without using cranes. It's pretty ingenious how he rocks this rock back and forth by using, he's putting little weights. So he puts a one weight on one side, and then he puts a little piece of wood on that opposite corner there, and then he puts it on the opposite side, and slowly he stacks the piece of wood like this, and makes the rock go up. And again, it just takes a lot of patience, but that's how he makes this rock go all the way up. And then once it's
He's
up,
lifting the rock.
yeah, he's lifting all by himself. So he's lifting the rock.
I don't know what he was trying to accomplish.
See, he's
here.
putting more and more pieces of things.
Yep.
And it takes him days or months. And then eventually he shows how a giant rock like that can be lifted, again, without cranes, just by using gravity. So, and it's funny because in this video, he's not 100%, he kind of did the calculations, but he says he's not 100% sure if it's going to work. So
On this rope. So then I'm going to release the rope, come back in, and the rope's going to be my brake. I'm going to guide it into the pit. The easiest way I can explain this is this is just a big teeter-totter, and I got the big kid on that end, and he's going to go down, this end's going up.
He believes in his technique, but he's had some setbacks in the past.
One day I got thrown over top of a block, and a couple times I had the blocks roll off the top
Holy.
and almost land on my feet. One time I knocked myself out cold on the concrete, and so it's been challenging. Okay. Are you ready? Yes.
look, it's going up. I mean, it's just one. This is one person. So imagine you have thousands of people.
All right.
Dedicated.
Yeah.
I gave myself brain
Now
damage
just
a
start
few
spraying
times,
the
but
sand.
it's all worth
The
it.
sand will wash out, and the block will start coming down.
Once the sand is washed from the pit, the block's own weight slowly stands it up.
Wow.
Look at that.
Okay, finally, she's between the lines, guys.
He leveled
Looks
it.
good.
He did it.
Wow.
So like that guy alone shows you that ancient Egyptians, and I'm saying not even the ancient Egyptians that we believe built them, but the ones that built things like the Atlantis and other much bigger cities. They just had the probably a lot of knowledge that was lost. Obviously, I mean, ancient Egyptians lost a lot of that. We're rediscovering a lot of that knowledge from their ancestors, and we're even now rediscovering some of these things. But I think they also just had, again, if you have enough patience and enough people, like this is just one guy in all these cases, then yeah, with thousands of people using animals too, but also using ingenuity and all that stuff, you can build these incredible things. It doesn't have
It only
to
cost
be
you a few concussions, according to that last guy.
well, yeah. I mean, he's kind of again doing it by himself, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these constructions did cause accidents, but
Yeah, by
Again.
yourself. I mean, that would be pretty. It's trial and error, right? So he's got no guidelines for that kind of thing, right? He's just figuring it out.
actually, there's I don't have clips for this thing, but there's this place in India, and then another one actually, in the Petra, and what is it in Jordan, right? I know your sister Annie went there. was at the end of Indiana Jones, the films where he was the last one, the Holy Grail one, where they find the Holy Grail, and then as they're leaving, you can see there it's this beautiful like it looks like a building sculpted into side of a mountain, like, and there's actually similar ones like that in India, and that was also like, I remember for the longest time people were like saying, oh, there had to be alien technology. They used some laser or something that would cut into this mountain top basically side, and out of basically just one piece of mountain they carved in their thing, basically like what simple guys now did, basically just farmers did with Mount Rushmore. They made a beautiful sculpture, right?
Yeah.
And if the money didn't run out, they would actually the sculpture would be much more magnificent.
Because the idea of Mount Rushmore was that they wanted to do it like
The whole body.
not the whole body, like
Oh, no?
till their chest,
Okay.
but
And they had more presidents they were planning to put, right?
yeah, like along the whole thing. But
Yeah.
it's as far as they got.
But the other ones, the guys, the Native Americans that are now doing it with their own funding,
Yeah,
they're,
that's why
I mean,
it's taking even longer.
but they're doing incredible. It's going to be much bigger than Mount Rushmore. And again, it's
Yeah.
just
And
they have
'cause
the
that one
patience.
is they actually have the model because it's
Yeah.
gonna be a horse and the Indian on
Yeah,
top
yeah.
of the horse. And,
It's going to be incredible sculpture, yeah.
yeah, and they do it all by dynamite.
Yeah, exactly. And it just shows you there's without a thing. So when you start looking
And
at
like
it,
sculpting little
yeah.
details.
So when you think you start going, and then I actually saw that there was some artist in India who also was doing much smaller like this, but he was by himself, sculpting these amazing things out of like this, it's like one piece, so without even using blocks. And that's when you realize people are able to do incredible things if they have the will, the cooperation of multiple people and stuff. Then they can build these amazing structures like that in Jordan, or those beautiful castles that are carved into the mountainside in India, or like the pyramids. It just takes things. Doesn't mean that aliens are not real and that those UFO sightings and all that stuff. I think if anything, those aliens maybe come down because they're like, holy shit, look at these little monkeys. They're like, they're willing to spend all this time
Chipping away the stone.
Yeah. They're like, screw that. We'll just gonna whatever. We'll fly, to another planet, do something else. We don't have that patience, if anything. Like, I think that's the thing. It doesn't mean that just because aliens exist that they automatically are attributed. Like, people can do amazing things, I think. So that's my conclusion that came out of actually our visit to Coral Castle, which I thought, oh my God, I'm going to go there and I'm going to discover some amazing ancient technology. And then I went there.
Were
and
you
like,
disappointed then?
maybe part of it. I was like a little like, man, I thought it was something more.
You wanted to keep the fantasy.
Yeah, something more
or
magical.
the mystery.
Yeah.
There. But that's what happens when you dig too much into it. I just bought the story of the Sweet 16 and that was it. That's all I needed to know.
You just needed a love story.
I did.
And you see, I think Ed was smart with the marketing because he knew, okay, the men will be more interested in how the hell I built this. Women will be like, why did I build it? So let me come up with a little love story.
Yeah. No, but it was cool because, like we said, just for him alone to build this, doesn't matter how he did it. Whether aliens helped him or he did it by himself or he used all these systems or, I don't know. It was really cool. It was a cool place to visit. It was scorching hot, but it was a really cool place to visit. Yeah. And then just finding out his story and how he lived there and why he built certain areas, around the castle. It's a cool place to visit. It's a short visit. You get a tour guide, when you go there and they tell you the story and they explain to you the different things that he built, like where he punished the kids and, his throne and the bathtub. And the bathtub was tiny. Literally, it was for him. And all these things, about the stars and the calendars and the clock, the table, Florida. He really put a lot of thought into all the things that he built, and they all had a purpose. Yeah. They were all for something.
Well, he lived there, right, too? So he actually lived in that building.
He lived in that tower. Yeah. Very primitively. He said he didn't have a bed. He slept like in a hammock type thing that hung.
Because of all the bugs, right?
Because of all the bugs. His food was always also in some sort of hammock thing, basket, because this way the ants wouldn't crawl to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it just shows you that
and then,
really nothing's impossible.
Yeah. And then also interesting, that's why, you can say what you want. But, he also, to get up to his tower, there were 16 steps. You know, and then that pond was 16 corners, and it's just everything had 16. So maybe it was his favorite number. I don't know. Or maybe it was the 16-year-old girl that he left behind in Latvia.
Maybe.
So, you know, don't come down and ruin it for the rest of us.
Okay, but that's what I would say, though, is that I would say that for any of you guys who are, I guess, doubting it, or you know, maybe you're a little disappointed with my conclusion, which, again, is just my opinion, that, you know, that there's no aliens or whatever, that I think he just was a, you know, he just was a committed man. So if you guys are not happy with my conclusion, I would just say, before, you know, well, let me know down in the comments below. Let me know what you think.
You should have given this warning at the beginning.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, my opinion maybe will change. Maybe something else somebody will show me in the future, and I'll be like, holy crap, you know. But right now, I would just say
He was a smart guy.
he was a smart guy, per thing, and I would say anybody who doesn't agree with my thing or whatever, I would first ask you guys, did you actually go and see it? Because I see too many people just leaving comments, but they've never actually gone themselves.
But people have comments for a lot of things that they have never seen.
Yeah, exactly. But that's
There's always going to be opinions.
No. But I'm saying, but if you're disagreeing with me, that's fine. But like, give me the big reasons why.
Well, I was there, so.
Because I'm saying, because I used to also have very strong opinions about it that were drastically, like, basically opposing a lot of the things I'm saying now, and then when like I said, once I was there and I saw it with my own eyes, I realized the reality of it kind of hit me, that it's still beautiful, but it's not the Great Pyramids of Giza.
Well, I don't know. I still think it's incredible.
Yeah, it is.
This whole construction that he did it by himself.
Exactly.
And like I said, even if he had help or if he didn't, the fact that he came up with these techniques and to cut the stone, to pull the stone out, to move the stone from one side and put it on top. For me, that is it's just wow. Especially because I don't know, I love things like that.
Yeah. Daniel, what do you think? Because I know you weren't there, but
yeah, I think it was pretty incredible. Just thinking that some, I guess, a relatively short guy would be able to do such a big job, even if it did take as long as it did. Like I think it would have taken me 100 times longer, as I said about the IKEA thing. So
yeah,
but at least he lived to see it finished. Maybe he had
kind of, yeah.
but the main thing that he built inside the walls, he finished it.
Yeah,
maybe he had plans to do other things
maybe.
outside.
We don't know, but yeah.
But I think that he finished it because he would let people in. I mean, he was just, and he would treat it like a business. Yeah. No, it's an interesting story.
Now, there's that saying that they say that artwork is never truly finished. It's just abandoned, something like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's finished when you say it's finished, essentially.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you would have just kept on tinkering with it. But
yeah.
Now,
probably.
For those of you guys who don't know, I mean, Daniel hasn't been saying much because this was my idea for this podcast because I went there with Krisia.
I also went there.
So that apologies for that. Next episode is all Daniel. You're gonna take it away. But yeah. So you, like, when I first told you about this, what did you think when you first heard about it? Did you think it was like some alien technology or some crazy, I don't know, secrets?
I wasn't too sure, just because I'd never heard of it before. I'd honestly never heard of anything like it. You said it was similar to like the pyramids, so I wasn't too sure, what to make of it. And then I watched a few documentaries on it, and I could see somebody being able to do it. Like everything made sense, like they were saying. It's essentially you just have to kind of know what you're doing. It still doesn't take away from what he did, though.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think I would have, had I heard of it before, I don't think I would have leaned towards alien technology, but I could see why people would think that just because of the time period.
Yeah,
exactly. The time period, the tools he used, the things he was doing for the time. It was.
And when you see it in person, you see that although it's incredible, you can also see that he was like the actual chip marks and all that stuff where he was working with it. And then for me, I know is when I started reading the full book that I got. Or the booklets that he wrote, multiple of them, like I said, I see he was a very smart person, but he wasn't, he didn't know everything. So like some things in there that are a little bit now, especially you see a little outdated. And then also seeing the videos of these guys, like one guy in Michigan, who just does stuff in his backyard, and other people showing how certain things were done just 100 years ago, how they were done much more differently. That's what makes me go, okay, so people could do this. It was just different techniques. And so to us right away thinks, oh, well, he didn't have a crane, or there's no way he could do it. Yeah, just because you don't know how to do it doesn't mean that, people are pretty creative. So that's my opinion. But anyways, if you guys really, really disagree with me, let me know in the comments below why I'm such an idiot, I guess. And
well, no, I personally am happy that I see both sides of the coin, right? Why he created this story, or maybe that story is true. I still believe the story, by the way.
Oh, the Sweet 16?
Yes, I still believe it. But I also understand, right, now how he did it, and how the mystery of this coral castle, But I think the fact that they tell you the story of the love, and it just makes it more of a mysterious thing, like, oh, a poor man, he was alone, and he did it for this woman that never came, and But like you said, for guys, it's more like, how did he do it?
Yeah, the technical aspect. Anyways, that's it for this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. and as always, if you guys want to check out the rest of the episodes that we have, or like some of the clips, and most interesting parts from some of them, follow. You can find all of that in the links down below in the description. But you can see basically, or hear our podcast, or see us on Spotify. You can see on YouTube, on Rumble, everywhere basically. But if you want to hear it anywhere else, that you guys can hear this podcast, like iTunes, whatever, Google Podcasts, anywhere, you guys will be able to find us. Just always look for Galga TV, and that's it, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's it. If you have a chance and you're in the Miami-Dade area, just stop by. It's a really, really cool place to see.
Yeah,
to see it
it's worth it
with your eyes in person.
Bring something cold to drink, though.
Yes, and maybe an umbrella.
An umbrella, yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.